is a commercial photographer in the Atlanta area. He has many magazine covers to his credit. There's a black book. Can somebody give me the black book real quick? I just have to show you a couple things real quick. So you might have seen some of his work. How can I do this? In Upscale Magazine, Control. He does many magazine covers. All the beautiful people that you see, Alan makes look even more beautiful. He's a very, very talented photographer. But of course, as you know, I'm showing his personal work, which is his fine art work. And Alan is an adjunct professor at the Savannah College of Art and Design. He hails from New York, and we're glad to have you here in Atlanta. So I wanted to introduce our guest tonight to this fabulous work. I've been hearing a lot of people say how beautiful it is, and it really is. I don't know which one is my favorite. I've kind of gravitated to all of them at different points in time. But the series is called Courtney, a visual depiction of a love I don't completely understand. That's a long title. Can you tell us about the inspiration for this work?
If I talk like this, do I still need a microphone?
Yes, you need a mic.
Hello.
Come closer. So you guys can come a little closer. So everybody can hear.
So, as she said, the series is called Courtney, a visual depiction of a love I don't completely understand, for a lot of reasons. What I want to start off by saying is that it's interesting because I have a lot of different people here from either from just relationships through Arnika, relationships from when I first started photography in undergrad, and then relationships that I've built since I've been in Atlanta. And in all of those different sectors, I kind of had a different style of photography that I was delving in at that moment. And I don't think in any of those scenarios was I ever photographing flowers. So I'm kind of introducing this work to everyone at the exact same time for the most part. Some of you might have heard Arnika mention it. You might have heard me mention it at some point, but this is my first kind of introduction to it. For me, when you think about flowers, I think there's a lot of parallels, right? So I always kind of correlate flowers to love, and I'm very adamant about love. I really enjoy love. I don't run away from it. I really love love, right? So when I was in relationships, oftentimes the woman that I would be in that relationship with that I loved wanted flowers, right? That was fine. She loved flowers. So I'd buy her flowers because I loved her and she loved flowers. It was just that simple. You love flowers, I love you, I get you flowers, maybe you love me a little bit more. That's how it connected. What I realized was that there was this weird kind of parallel in all of those situations where the flowers would always end up dying, right? So you'd put the little powder, you know, the stuff that comes with the flowers into the water, and they'd still die, right? And I looked at the relationships that I was in, and I saw that the relationships would kind of dissipate into thin air, very similar to those flowers, right? So I started thinking, well, what if she loved flowers enough to not ever want the flowers for herself? Right? She loved flowers enough to let them stay in the garden and never be picked. Right? If I loved her enough to let her stay where she was and just let her do what she was doing, then maybe she would have lasted a lot longer than the flowers that I kind of plucked. There was always that parallel. Right? So what I ended up finding out is that these pictures gave me the opportunity to kind of hold on to that love that was fleeting in real life. Right? So these pictures will last longer than those relationships. These pictures typically last longer than the life of the flowers. Right, and these pictures will last longer than all of these things, right? And that's the goal, essentially, when you first start off with that love. It's supposed to last forever, and subsequently the issue is that it starts to die, and you can put as much of the little powder in there, and like put them by the window, and fan them, and like, you know, they say like when you exhale, all of that. It doesn't work, right? Because their fate is already set before you even get the flowers. Once you pluck them out of the ground, once I handed those flowers to her, there was a clock, right? And I learned that in my relationships, in my scenarios, in my situations, as much as I loved her, I couldn't turn that clock back. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't freeze it. So the pictures gave me the opportunity to kind of hold on to that love. the pictures gave me the opportunity to kind of look at these scenarios and reflect on what that meaning meant to me during the time I was experiencing it. So if you look at the names of the pieces, some of the names are slightly maybe vague a bit. If you've seen some of my other work, I'm not very clever with my names, right? If you've seen some of my portrait work, one of the pieces was called Old Rich Man. An old guy. He had wealth. I had another picture that was called Door. It was a door, right? So there wasn't a lot that was involved in that. So the thing that was difficult for me was a few things. I wanted to try to make sure that these pieces, the names of them meant something not just to me, but to the audience, to the person, right? To the person that was looking at the image. I mean, because they're all subjective, right? They change depending on your experiences with flowers. Even for me, for example, my father passed away, and I hadn't gone to his cemetery in a really long time. And I went there a couple of weeks ago, and my aunt had left these fake flowers on his grave. And I asked her why, and she said because when the flowers die, they come through the graves and they clean them. So they just take all the flowers and throw them away. But if you put these fake flowers out there, they'll never get rid of them. And of course the parallel goes, well, if I kind of imbue this kind of fake love and fake concern for a relationship, then we're good, right? We can just act like it means something that it actually doesn't. But you always invest yourself when you love, right? You always give your all. You want to give the real thing. But subsequently the issue just starts to fade away. So whatever the case is, look at the names. The names kind of speak to the overall feeling of what love kind of creates. Each of these rooms is separate. So this is essentially like the black and white room, right? We have the synthesis image in the back, which is essentially the synthesis room, deconstructed, if you'll see that in the hallway. Right? Did everybody see those already? And then also, of course, the challenge in this situation is I don't know how to define love, right? So Arnika was created this brainchild when we were having this conversation about the names to have the definitions of the words that we came up with as the names, and it parallels the entire situation, because if I clearly understood what love was, then I'd know how to handle it differently or handle it better or just be prepared for what it had in store. But I don't, even though I know the definition, or I feel like I do in the moment that I'm dealing with it. I think that's it.
Alan, why are these black and white? What's the black and white? And where did you start with in this room?
So if we just kind of do like a virtual walk, because a lot of people aren't, right? The black and white images for me kind of, they're where everything started. Photographically, they're where everything started, right? Like, so before you had color images, you were just dealing with black and white. And there's something innocent about that black and white image. When you look at some of the names in here, for example, if you look at the title of the names in the black and white room and kind of try to run them together as a sentence, it kind of speaks to, in the beginning of that love, right? There's a certain level of innocence, right? And if those things work out well, sometimes they don't, things get a little like out of focus, a little blurry, not so sharp, right? So then you go from that situation into the center room or into the hallway. And when you kind of play around with that, you think about the idea of them being deconstructed, or like you kind of pull apart what you're doing wrong, or what she's doing wrong, or what he's doing wrong, and you try to make sense of it, and you try to put it back together, but it never goes back together, right? Like if you pull a petal off of a flower, you can't put that petal back on the flower, but you still try to kind of corral them all together and make them look like they looked when you first got the flowers, but it just doesn't work. So they slowly just start to kind of fall apart. And then we have absence in the back left room, and if you look at the pieces, it's just really about the absence of so many things. I mean, I don't want to put a name or a word or a context to it, because I think it's very specific to you and what you dealt with, right? And then we have synthesis in the back right room, which is essentially like a culmination of all of these different things. And the image kind of has the petals that you could kind of label each of the individual petals, that emotion that you've experienced. So I kind of started here because it was the purest form, and then kind of went through all of these different kind of phases, which is why the pieces are kind of grouped together. We actually started with a lot more pictures in mind. It was about 15, maybe even 18. But we ended up kind of scaling down because it was an opportunity to kind of create some clarity. Like it was an opportunity to kind of breathe. One thing that Arnika doesn't know is that when I started this, all of these pieces had names of the people, right? Like the experiences, the person. But my friends that have known me for like 10 years know I'm very private. Like this is already too much. You all are like looking at me right now. Right? So it was difficult because I felt like my relationships with whoever that was, I wanted it to be unique to that person, and I didn't want to just kind of smear it and make it seem like it was just something easy that I could just kind of throw it onto one picture. So the series actually has a name, but the titles of the pieces are a bit more vague in the sense that they don't identify an individual. Are there any questions?
And the smaller images over here.
The smaller images actually were a bit more exploratory. We were just trying some stuff. And what I mean by that is, I started off wanting to make all of these images with this resin. The idea was that, without talking too much about the process, you kind of pour this resin on there, and it starts off being white and kind of creamy and unclear. And as time progresses, everything starts to clear up. Right, but when I tried to find the parallel, I needed it to go in reverse, actually. I'd rather it have started clear and then started to get hazy. But that's just not how it actually works. So it was better for me to kind of make these one-of-one scenarios. Because if I tried to do these in mass quantities, they would all be so different and so drastically wrong. I did 15 of them 3 days ago, and none of them look the same at all. So they won't be seen.
That's a metaphor for people and relationships as well.
Right, I don't know if you heard, she said that was a metaphor for the relationship. Absolutely, I agree. Just felt a little unsafe taking that approach. Right, yes.
I don't have a question, but I wanted to comment. I'm just so much enjoying the show and how thoughtful it is. And one thing I wanted to comment on is your decision to not name each piece. And I really feel like as a viewer, that kind of gives me more of a place to put myself into the piece, which I think is what you're talking about. And then also your choice to have this reflective background, I think, is also another way in which I really feel like I'm being put into that piece, like visually put into that piece. And I just think that's so smart and just really great.
Thank you. I'm going to own that. That's what I did. That's what I did right there. When she said, I did that. But she was referencing the reflective surface. I mean, that does play a part in it, right? Because playing with your focus of your own personal eyes, when you look at the image, you can look through the image and see yourself again, right? Like it always kind of circles back around to the whole idea of love, like looking at the image for what it is and then looking past the image and being able to see yourself again. I'm going to be walking around, so of course if you have personal questions that you want to ask me about one specific piece, if you don't feel comfortable asking now, because you can, right, just let me know. But thank you all for coming out. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
So I wanted to mention to you from an art side of things, each one of these images are an addition of 15. That means there'll be 15 of these in the world, end of story. That's it. And I think that Alan's work is incredible, and I know that many people will love to have it in their homes. There's a gallery book here that has the titles of all the pieces, and I just have to mention that something a little different for Alan, something a little different for Arnika Dawkins Gallery to show this work, and I'm glad it's resonated well. We are also offering, if you'd like to acquire it, flexible payment plans. So keep that in mind if you'd like to get one of the 15 of these. And what's wonderful about that is this work will appreciate over time. Alan is a rising superstar and has a wonderful career ahead of him and has traveled really well thus far. So if you have any questions for either of us, please let us know. And thanks so much for coming.